A high-level gathering in London intended to help end Russia's war in Ukraine has been scaled back after U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced he would not attend, intensifying a dispute between Washington and Kyiv over territories held by Russia. Rubio was expected to join discussions with officials from Ukraine, the UK, and Europe, but State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce stated Tuesday that he would not participate due to logistical reasons. The UK's Foreign Office later confirmed Wednesday that the meeting would now proceed at a reduced level. Talks at the official level will still take place but will be closed to the press. These developments add further uncertainty to the diplomatic push to end the conflict. The U.S. has been increasingly firm in urging Kyiv to reach a deal, but Ukraine remains steadfast in refusing to surrender Crimea, which Russia took in 2014, or the eastern territories seized after Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022. U.S. Vice President JD Vance threatened to pull out of negotiations on Wednesday, stating during a trip to India, "We've presented a clear proposal to both Russia and Ukraine, and now it's time for a decision. The U.S. cannot remain in this process indefinitely. We've invested heavily in diplomacy and efforts on the ground." However, Ukraine's European partners, notably the UK and France, have been working to find middle ground. Wednesday's discussions followed a prior meeting in Paris where officials from the US, UK, France, and Germany reviewed the American peace proposal. After Rubio canceled his attendance, Bruce said President Donald Trump's envoy for Ukraine and Russia, Keith Kellogg, would represent the US in London instead. The US-backed proposal at the center of the disagreement reportedly includes acceptance of Russian control over Crimea, as well as a ceasefire along the current battlefronts. This would mark a reversal of long-standing U.S. policy, according to a source familiar with the framework. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky emphasized Tuesday that while he remains open to dialogue, Kyiv will never accept a resolution that acknowledges Russian control over Crimea. Ukraine will not legally recognize the occupation of Crimea, he stated. There's no basis for discussion. It violates our Constitution. Asked to clarify whether the U.S. wanted to freeze the current territorial boundaries, Vance responded Wednesday, "No, that's not what I said. What I meant is that the eventual new borders will likely be close to the current ones. That means both Russia and Ukraine will have to give up some of the land they presently hold. It'll involve territorial compromises." Meanwhile, fighting has reignited following a brief ceasefire over Easter, which both sides accuse the other of violating. On Wednesday, Ukrainian officials reported 9 fatalities and over 30 injuries after a Russian drone struck a commuter bus near Marhanets in the Dnipropetrovsk region. Russia's National Guard claimed it intercepted 17 Ukrainian drones overnight, according to official sources. The London meeting was planned amid growing U.S. concern over the lack of headway in efforts to end the war. Trump stated that both sides must show genuine interest in ending the conflict for the U.S. to continue its role in the negotiations. His comments followed Rubio's warning last week that the U.S. might step back from its diplomatic efforts if no progress is made. According to Rubio and the State Department, a general outline has already been shared with both parties to see if key differences can be resolved quickly. Some parts of the plan still need to be finalized, and U.S. officials plan to collaborate with European partners and Ukrainian leaders on that work this week. Trump's envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, was expected to visit Moscow this week to keep talks going with Russian President Vladimir Putin, the White House said Tuesday. The Kremlin confirmed Witkoff's visit, though it did not provide further details, according to Russian sources. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said Tuesday that negotiations appeared to be hopefully heading in the right direction, but she did not elaborate on what it would mean for the U.S. to reduce its involvement in the peace efforts. Moscow has previously delayed ceasefire discussions and rejected a U.S. plan for a 30-day truce that Kyiv had already accepted. Still, Facing pressure from Trump, both Ukraine and Russia have recently shown new openness to negotiate. Marking the first time in years the two sides have signaled such willingness, as they have not held direct talks since early 2022 after Russia's full invasion began. On Monday, Putin mentioned he was open to discussing a ceasefire that would stop attacks on civilian areas, but emphasized the need for further talks to define what qualifies as a civilian target. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov later confirmed Putin's stance, noting that the Russian leader was referring to potential talks with Ukrainian representatives, according to reports from Russia's Interfax news agency.